to the whole podcast, KC. I'm your host, Kirby Huff. And today we have with us Employment Services. We have April and Jack. And I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves and the role they have here at the whole person.
Hi, my name's Jack. I'm one of the employment specialists here. I work with a number of different types of consumers. I have like a couple of different regular consumers, but primarily I work with pre-ets. So the youth students that are kind of either in their senior year of high school, kind of entering the workforce, and I help them kind of learn how to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack, and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
My name is April. I'm the Employment Services Manager here at the Whole Person, and I work with multiple employment specialists and job coaches. And my sole purpose is to help people with disability, but also to manage and help support my team to so that they can be successful.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for that. And thanks for being here today. We appreciate your time. So let's jump right into this. What inspired you guys to work with individuals with disabilities?
Well, me personally, I am an individual with a disability. And when I found out about the whole person and kind of what they did here, I felt kind of compelled. I have personally utilized vocational rehab for services when I was in college. They helped pay for my books and they helped me get through school. And so being able to find an outlet to give back to that and do something that I care about and just have any sort of compassion in my job was important, and this is the place for that.
Absolutely.
What inspired me was my daughter. I feel like I have to be her advocate, and I started here as a job coach, and then I loved it so much working with the students over the summer, and then being able to transition as an employment specialist, and then work in my current role now. But I also equally have autism and ADHD, so it's a disability that. Um, I wanna help advocate for with a lot of our consumers.
I feel when you're working with consumers with disabilities and experience them yourselves, that it's a lot more meaningful and they feel a lot more comfortable working with you. Because of course, I have a disability and that's how I feel when I'm,
Oh,
working with
yeah,
someone.
100%. I feel like the connection that I began to develop, like, with all of the students that I've worked with over the summer, only increased as they started to kind of learn more about me too and saw that, like, not only am I someone that's here to support them? here to support them, and I have that same experience.
Right.
I'm not just saying, like, like, "This is I know it's hard and sometimes things are, tricky or whatever." Like, I've lived it too, and
Right.
it's really helpful, I think, to
Right.
everyone to see, like, we're all in this together kinda
Right.
thing about, like, advocacy and stuff about.
And it's definitely more encouraging to hear coming from
Yeah,
somebody that has
definitely.
experienced it and gone through the same struggles that they're going through.
Absolutely. I hope so.
I feel like the relatability, makes the connection even when I was an employment specialist and even now with my own consumers. Um, they see they can look up to somebody and that they know that I'm gonna advocate for them as well. So,
Right.
it makes
Absolutely.
it easier for them.
For sure. And I feel like it also makes your job a little bit more enjoyable because
Oh, well,
you're
yeah.
really helping people.
100%.
Mhm.
I think knowing I'm helping people that not don't always necessarily need the help, but need the resource to learn what they can, like, go and do in the world.
Right. Right. Awesome. Could you provide an overview of the employment services that the whole person has to offer?
So we have a lot of employment services. Most people just hear employment services and they automatically think like it's just we help find jobs. We actually have a multitude of things. We do employment services, which is an individual that can has sustained employment on their own, but they may have trouble finding jobs, whether they moved here from a different state or they're just having trouble finding jobs if they can sustain employment. And then we have supported employment where somebody that may not know like what they want to do or struggle keeping a job for various reasons. We provide job coaching for them as well as support from the employment specialist. And then those are our basic two services. But then we also do on the Missouri side, we do discovery and exploration where the individual can come, like if they've never had any job experience, they can come and we can help them explore that, do an assessment, pick 3 places within the community, that they may want to explore working. And then we also do Missouri Summer Work. It's 6 weeks, where students come to us, we have 3 sites currently, but we're looking to develop more relationships with businesses so that we can explore, other options for the students. And then we do Missouri Transition, um, and that's usually virtually, but I think I'm gonna have it done, over, like, in person too, so that, I feel like when you surround yourself with like-minded individuals, you don't feel so alone. So I feel like for
Absolutely.
that, it's important to have, those connections with peers. And then we also have community-based work assessment on the Kansas side, kinda same thing to the D&E, except for it's, 80 hours. And then we have, like, job tryout and then job prep 1 and 2. And then we do job development, resume development, kind of all things employment.
Wonderful. Yeah, I had no idea there were so many different services
Mhm.
offered.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving
That's great.
parts at
Yeah.
all given time, then accepting referrals and, making those relationships with VR and, RS on the Kansas side, so.
How do these services cater to individuals with disabilities?
Well, whenever we provide job coaching to someone, we are coming into the position with them and we're kind of helping them learn the job. And so it's an individualized like approach to learning the position that we help our consumers get into. We're allocating and like we're finding the accommodations and any sort of accessibility that might be necessary within the role that they've been placed in. And then we help them secure transportation while they're, like looking for the jobs, like helping them get to the jobs that they are then placed into.
Sure.
And like kind of just helping them foster their independence within having a job and following a career path.
Okay. What would you say some of the key challenges that people face when searching for a job?
Well, I talked about it a little bit just now that securing transportation, I
Right.
think transportation is a huge barrier for a lot of our consumers, a lot of
It is.
people with disabilities in general. And
Right.
I mean, even in general. Um, but I think that a lot of the time, too, just as I'm starting to be here and working within the community more, sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge of even what is
Right.
out there,
What's available?
what's
Yeah.
available, or even just like what little it would take to make a job open up for so many more different types of people. There's a lot of tools and resources now that people sometimes just don't know about.
Right. Right. And then it's just, yeah, the fact of like finding them and sharing them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How does the whole person help the individual find meaningful employment?
Well, within, like each consumer that I have gets an individualized, like approach to what position that they are wanting to find. And so sometimes it's just even like reaching out to the community and bridging that gap in knowledge for the places that they would be like looking for.
Can you explain what employabilities is and its primary goals?
Yeah. So, EmployAbilities is a program that we have here at the Whole Person in our catering kitchen. It's an 8 week long training program where students can come in and learn how to work in a class, or I'm sorry, work in a kitchen, and then utilize those skills in an actual workplace.
Okay, great. What are the 3 stages of the employabilities, and what can they expect from each stage?
Well, so the first stage is kind of preparing for the kitchen. They're learning in the classroom things like kitchen inventory, like food shelf life and proper labeling, food safety procedures, things like that. And then they start to kind of build a portfolio that they'll kind of work on throughout the program that they get to carry with them when they're done. And then when they get to stage two, they're in the kitchen and they're getting like hands on practical work experience in our catering kitchen. So they get to learn about food production, they get to learn how to follow recipe instructions, and then kind of working together as well as individually in a kitchen to like accomplish the goal of, like in our case, a commercial kitchen. And then once they're in stage three, they kind of put all of that stuff together, what they've learned, and we take them to go get their food handler's permit. We help them with mock interviews. We kind of finalize their portfolio, help them build a resume, and then we have a graduation ceremony where they've then are they have a little bit more to go and find a job within like a restaurant service or things like that. That there's and with all of the knowledge already.
Sure. And so how would this, I mean, I guess you pretty much covered that,
Uh-huh.
prepare them for yeah, you basically is let's go to the next question.
Sorry, I kind
Um,
of threw all that into one.
no, it's fine. What are some of the key skills that some of the participants learn from the employabilities program?
Well, when our consumers are in the kitchen, I know that they're learning a lot of like actual practical knowledge about working and cooking. They're learning how to rotate products that are on the shelves. They're learning how to prepare different recipes, following those measurement instructions. And then just the everyday hands on things when working in a kitchen that sometimes you wouldn't know. Like,
Right, right. All right, we're going to take a quick ad break and we will be right back.
Life can present challenges, but the whole person believes in turning challenges into triumphs. Our staff is trained to provide compassionate, personalized care that enhances the lives of our consumers, enabling them to live independently and with dignity. The whole person believes in the power of human connection. Our staff extends their reach into vibrant communities, fostering connections and creating moments of joy for every consumer we serve. Whether that's through peer support groups, adaptive sports, employment services, or non-emergency medical transportation, our staff provides exceptional care and become trusted companions and confidants. Your donation will help us continue to expand our programs and services to help people with disabilities remain independent and living in their home. Consider giving a gift today. Thank you.
Welcome back to the whole podcast, Casey. We will continue with Jack and April in employment services. All right. How do you measure the success of the importance of the employment services?
So, we take a comprehensive approach that includes tracking employment outcomes, participant progress, as well as evaluating long term impact and success stories and feedback. Um, the each consumer goes through milestones, and so those milestones are from start to 90 days of employment. So after the 90 days of employment, we still track their progress for another 6
Oh,
months.
okay.
So we see like what the program has done for them and how it's impacted their life even 6 months after. But the success stories are kind of my favorite
Yeah,
thing because
absolutely.
they go from not having employment to never thinking they're going to have employment to the ending of 90 days of successful employment. And everybody's journey is their own. So, like,
Right.
one person may work for 90 days for employment services, but supported employment, they may work for 9 months before they actually reach their 90 days. So, their countdown starts when they're under 10% of job coaching. So, we could support them at all different lengths of time.
Okay. Awesome. So, for someone, a consumer in Missouri, what does that process look like when they're looking for employment?
So both Kansas and Missouri, we go through referrals through vocational rehab in the Missouri side and rehab services on the Kansas side. But for Missouri consumers, they would need to reach out to vocational rehab and ask for employment services. I get questions like pretty much every day about how they can start. So vocational rehab is who, like, does the referral. So, they do their assessment, and then they decide what services the individual is gonna get, whether it's, a D&E or supported employment services. Um, and so from there, they will reach out, like, they'll have their meeting, and then from there, they'll be our counselor will reach out to me and say, "Hey, do you have an employment specialist that's accepting, referrals?" We usually do, and so I will place that consumer with an employment specialist, but then I usually am the one that goes down to VR and has a meeting, where VR, so it'll be like myself, VR, and then the consumer, and they pretty much pass the baton to me.
Okay.
And then we do an intake and then we start employment services shortly after. And then they'll start meeting weekly and do job development and whatever service that, VR authorized.
Okay. Great. How do you collaborate with local employers to create opportunities for your consumers?
Well, sometimes, it's as easy as going into a store or location and kind of like building a connection, making a rapport with someone in a position and finding what positions are available. But, understanding what the needs of all of our consumers are and finding they're interested in, what they're interested in doing, and then using those resources and those connections that we've made to place them based on like, jobs they're actually interested in.
I think that sometimes people think that we're like a staffing agency and we kind of have this bank of employers that we work with. VR likes us to have competitive integrated employment. So it's if anybody can go out and apply for jobs. We do have connections with some people and we use our own resources like personally and professionally. But for the most part, it's just we start from scratch and it's completely individualized.
Okay, that makes sense. What steps can employers take to make sure that they have a more inclusive workforce?
Um, well, honestly, to educate yourself about any sort of inclusivity is
Right.
so important in this day and age, especially, but at all, to kind of learn the different avenues that you can take to provide more accessibility, but also asking your employer or your employees what could be done to make the job more accessible, to be more helpful. And then, there's training and inclusivity, strategies, bringing in like inclusivity when you're hiring people, making sure that you don't have biases within your hiring. Um, there's a lot.
Right. Educating yourself, I feel like, is
Yeah,
number one.
definitely. I think the more that you are aware of what limitations people are having to experience just because there's nothing being done what could be done, then it's that simple. It's like learning that you aren't doing something or that
Right.
there's something missing that you didn't even know was missing.
Right. So, what advice would you give to individuals with disabilities who are entering the workforce?
Well, remember the resources that you have and sometimes even like find resources that you have. There is a lot more within the community that sometimes people realize, like even just vocational rehabilitation. Sometimes when you have a disability, that's a resource that you are knowledgeable about and you've maybe utilized before. But sometimes people, like, it took until someone else told me about it before I even learned that it was something that I could utilize. And it helped me find avenues that eventually led me to this job. And just remembering what you're capable of. Um, like kind of I said it before, but the sometimes experiences lead us to putting ourselves in boxes unfairly.
Right.
And we just, kind of resign it to saying, like, okay, well, I've always wanted to do X or Y, but I don't think I can. And that's never the case. I mean, there's never a job that I've heard of someone say that they wanted to do that I thought they can't do that because that's what training and education and
Right.
sometimes job
Absolutely.
coaching and an extra set of hands to help you find how to get there are for.
Right. Absolutely.
And the main thing is too is just knowing the law and your rights
Yeah.
as somebody with disability. I feel like we're like knowledge is power and sometimes people think that because it's the law, like, they just don't wanna challenge it or they don't wanna stand up for themselves and they don't know, like, employers have to abide by, like, reasonable accommodations, and those are things that are reasonable, but people don't know that they can say, like, "I need this for support in order to be successful." So,
Right.
knowing, like, the laws and, your rights as a person with an individual with disability, it's important because that way you can help advocate or the person if you can't advocate for yourself, then you can have, like we advocate
Yeah. That's
100%
a
like
Right.
for our consumers. Like
So true.
and so if they don't know, like we're their voice until they do know.
mhm.
So,
Right. Right.
And I'll happily be their voice. That's
mhm,
that's it. That's a big part of
100%.
it. Like it's one of my kind of favorite things is like really just stepping into a place for someone and saying like, "Hey, like this is a position you have available and I have someone great for that." And it's like you know, I even sometimes am scared to do that for myself. Self advocacy
Right.
is hard, but
Right.
I love to be able to be a resource for someone to help like advocate as well.
Absolutely. Is there an example of this that comes to mind?
So I had a consumer that she had back problems. And so she needed to be able to sit and not stand constantly. And so the employer was not being very receptive of that. And so because of that, she wanted to quit her job, and the goal is to not quit. She was very passionate about working at this place, and so, but because the lack of knowledge of the business, they didn't understand the rights of reasonable accommodations,
Yeah,
and
I was just
so
about to
yeah,
say, like, that
so
should be on them, not her.
yeah, so but we find that a lot, and that's why working with, the whole person or an employment specialist is important because we help advocate because we do know, like, what is, considered a reasonable accommodation, and that could be like, in this situation, it was a chair, and we just needed to have or, like, a stool, and we just had to have a letter from her doctor saying that this is why and this is what was going on. And then usually the employer is fairly, receptive of that. But first it was a struggle. And like, had she not, and she's even said it to me, like, had she not had the support from me helping advocate for her, then she would have quit. And I mean, that happens a lot. So it's
Was
just,
she unaware that they weren't doing what they were supposed to
yes.
help her?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and a lot of consumers, they have no idea. They
Mhm.
just
Right.
really don't. Like, in the intake, we give literature, about, like, ADA and all the rules,
Right.
just kind of an overview, but, we also kind of work during the process of making sure that they understand that they have rights and, something like that or an assistive, technology, like, if somebody has, like, a communication barrier, then it's having those, that's a reasonable accommodation, for somebody that has difficulties with that too. But it happens a lot. It happens almost,
Oh,
I
I'm
would
sure.
say, over half the time that our consumers just don't know, and their caregivers don't know, or their
Mhm.
guardians don't know. And it's just important because, again, and it's not the fault, well, of the employer, but at the same time,
It's their
like
responsibility.
it's their responsibility to go by, those guidelines and that it's okay that they can have those accommodations met.
And it's something so simple,
Mhm.
like, how is that really gonna impact the work or the environment?
And
I could
usually it
share.
is. I mean, like, so for instance, like consumers that have like anxiety or PTSD or, mental emotional barriers, or they get really overstimulated and they just need an extra break. Like instead of having, two 15-minute breaks in an 8-hour shift, they can break it up to 5 minutes every like so often, or they can do grounding techniques and go take a break or go walk. But they just people give up, they lose hope because they've
Right.
had 15 jobs before, they've come to us and they don't realize that those are small accommodations
Right,
that
and
can be
it's
made.
so ridiculous that employers are so hard on such an easy fix for
Mhm.
someone to be able to be employed, you know?
And the other thing that, I wanna bring light to is that it's your right to disclose your disability, and I tell the consumers that every day, like, they don't have to disclose it if they don't want to, it's their right. It's a double-edged sword, though, because like, if you don't
If you
disclose it,
right.
then they can't be
They're
expected to
not
make
forced to
those
make
the
that accommodation,
Mhm.
accommodations,
right?
and so it's just, how comfortable people do, and that's something we work with the consumers as well. So, like, if they once didn't feel comfortable because they didn't know how to like say it or approach it, or they just felt uncomfortable or they would be judged or, whatever, or maybe not get a job because they disclosed the disability. We work with them like
Mhm.
building the confidence and giving them, the basically we're their backbone
Mhm.
until they can, do it for themselves. So
Yeah, I know just personally, we used to I mean, I've applied for different jobs in my life, and I used to not, disclose that information until I realized that it was only hindering, like, my expectations of performance in that I do have, I sometimes get a little distracted. The 5-minute breaks, like you said, are
mhm.
great for me, and as somebody that sits at my desk 2 15 minutes, 2 hours apart, I'm dying by that point, and so just to even recognize that something so simple as it's the same amount of time, step away from your desk,
Right.
take a minute, and that's all that the accommodation that a person needs. It's always something so simple.
Right,
Yeah,
it is.
It is, it's very
most of the time,
simple.
it's
Yeah,
always
most of
something
the
so
time it is,
simple.
and it's something that and again, it's just the employer
Not
knowing,
being
like,
Mhm,
educated.
what they're gonna
mhm,
do and, and just make sure that it's reasonable and they don't judge the reasonable part because sometimes people will judge that and they think, "Oh, well, they don't really need that." It's like it's not up to the
Mhm.
employer to judge that. It's just up to them to be supportive of their employees.
And provide it, right.
Yeah, and allow it, as long
Right.
as it's reasonable. Now, if you want, a recliner sitting there at your register, that's probably
That's
not gonna
silly.
happen, but a stool because you have back problems and, that's nothing, or an assistive
Right.
device, or
Right.
any other, like, breaks, or a task list. Cheat sheet is what I like to call it. Like, if somebody can't get a task down and it's, hard for them, then it's providing that sheet to, like, be at their desk, or their cubicle or their register or whatever the situation, or in their back pocket. I mean,
Right.
to be able to have that, comfort, then they're able to learn the skill and then they don't even need it after a while. So it's just those small things.
Right. Very small. What are your plans for the future of employment services?
So I have a lot of plans. I just took over this role as manager the end of January. And so I'm trying to implement so many different things and opportunities for our consumers, and even the employment specialist and the job coaches. My focus is to enhance the effectiveness of all of our programs and expand the reach and improve the support provided to participants, and then to continue to provide valuable support to individuals with disability, helping them achieve meaningful employment and a more inclusive workforce. But aside from that, I want to implement new programs as well that I think would be beneficial and helpful. I'm really excited that I've taken on this role. Although challenging at times, I'm, thankful that I'm able to advocate and do more things for people with disability.
Wonderful. That sounds like some great plans you have there. That's important when you're, running a team just to make sure, things are running smoothly and always improving. So how could the community get more involved and support your all's department at the whole person?
So it's mainly just, the community can engage in activities, create a more inclusive and supportive work environment for people with disability, but they can also be, more supportive. And like the community, I think they don't realize the role that they play, with just, I mean, various services, and for our consumers to be able to explore, like the discovery and exploration, or the community based work assessment. If people were more open to allowing our consumers to do those services there. And then, just helping us find ways to integrate our consumers with the disabilities in the workplace.
Okay. Can you share a success story? I know you kind of went into that earlier, but is there a
Yeah, success
particular
stories are
one?
my favorite. I'm going to
Yeah.
let Jack share her success story because
Okay.
it's super sweet.
All right.
Oh, goodness. Okay, well, I have, well, before I kind of got involved with more of the, like, pre-ET side where I'm working with students, I did get just a few, consumers that are, one of them is a young man that's in a wheelchair, and he has a passion for sports and was really interested in being a security guard, and kind of saw that as like something that was out of reach after, being in a wheelchair. He thought like thought it was out of his reach, and
Sure.
we went to Kauffman Stadium together, and he's actually taking his licensing this week to become a security guard. So he can
Wonderful.
work with all sorts of the events within, like, Kansas City sports, and it's exactly what he wanted, and it's, just s cool to see something that he didn't even wanted to do, but thought, like, had already kind of put himself in a box out of it,
Right.
and unfairly to himself too,
Right.
completely
Right.
unwarrantedly, because, like, I mean, he's about to go start working with the Royals, and
That's awesome.
When
Um,
he first came to us, he wanted a stay-at-home job because he had put himself in
yeah.
just this box of, like, not thinking that he could be successful outside of it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the fact that this is the path that he's kind of gone on is, it's very admirable that he was able to kind of come out of that with the help of Jack, supporting him and guiding him,
that's
because
awesome.
I think the rapport that she has with him is it's just I can't even express, like, how amazing it is to see when they meet, and then her advocating for him with transportation and some other barriers. You know, I don't really feel like if he would be where he's at, and had she not been there to help him come out of that, like, comfort zone.
Sure. Yeah, sometimes it's just like you don't know, until you get out and do the research
Yeah.
and find what you can do, and then that's great, there's so many opportunities for him.
And that's what, like, we're here for, like, the team that it's taken me a little bit to get the team, that we have, but, I've always told them all, like, "I can help you write a report, but I can't help you I can't help you love somebody and love our consumers at the place that they're at, right at the time that they're at in their lives." And so, I take, pride in the fact that I have an amazing team and they're willing to step up and advocate and do a lot of stuff for our consumers, and it really does make a difference. Like, if somebody feels loved and actually, like, valued,
Right,
then they will care and be more engaging and come out of their shell
right.
versus somebody that just is just a job.
Acts like they don't have the time for them
And we
and
Mhm.
don't in my department, like, we don't that's not a thing. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's really, embracing it and, going in difficult situations wherever the consumer is at the time in their life. I mean, it can be anywhere, a new accident that happened, like in her consumer's case, or it can be somebody that's lived with a disability their whole life, and it's helping them navigate it and give them that support that they need, in order to find successful employment and then long term, because I don't like to just put somebody in just, a job just because we can say, oh, they're just going to be pushed into a job. It's actually finding what they're passionate about
right,
so their job is successful the first time versus, them going through 4 jobs and then feeling worse about themselves. So it may take a little bit of time to find the right job, and, but once they do, it's like that's why we have success stories.
right. That's awesome. Yeah, and I will say I sit next to your team, here in the office, and they're so passionate and caring, and it's so refreshing to experience that because I know when I've been in the job market before, it's not always easy, and especially with having a disability and connecting
Mhm.
with somebody and getting those services. So it's very important. Yeah. April, do you have any success stories you'd like to share with our listeners?
So I have multiple that are just, like, dear to my soul, I guess, but, this consumer came to us from another state, and, he had a traumatic event happen in his life with his health, and so he was, normally, had jobs that he'd outlived the job, before, like, he would outlive like, he would work 15 years and the company would close down, from a small town, came here, so that he can be closer to family, and, he, was struggling to find employment, came to us. His sister was amazing and advocated for him. I started working with him when I was an employment specialist, and he, was struggling, was just at a low point in his life. His life just kind of got dumped upside down, and then now he, um, his primary disability, but then this health ailment made it, worse, and so for him, um, by so basically, we got him a job, and then the way we had to go about this specific job, it was technically the company required it to be through this agency so that he could get adequate training, but he had to work like 520 hours in order through training, to be signed on with this company. Um, Kinda like what you would think of as a staffing agency, but it's more like for the specific large company from Kansas City. And so, um, he was actually reached his 90-day milestone, in October, but I was still trying to get him on to the company, in March. They kept, like, for various reasons, like production rate, things like that. So even though he met his milestones, I still, helped him, and then VR and myself and his sister, we all kind of came together, and, so by the time March came, he sent me a picture of his badge that he was hired on, and I'm sorry, it's emotional,
Yeah, of
because he
course.
went through so much,
Yeah.
and he sent me a picture of his badge that he was finally able, through all
Oh,
of this
that's so
work and journey
awesome.
from October to March,
That's a long time.
and then so by the time we were done, he had his own apartment again. He had regained all of his, like, life skills that
And
he
his
maybe not have
independence.
as independence,
Yeah.
and then he got the job of his, like, absolute dreams with good benefits and all of that stuff, so
That's amazing.
it's like
You
it's
guys are giving me
I
goosebumps.
know, it's like I'm trying to hold back tears, because it is, like, it's just it's why we do what we do through the good and bad, and so even though we closed him, he met his milestones, I still felt empowered to just continue to help him through his journey, and he said that, like, if I wouldn't have helped him, like, he wouldn't have been able to get on
Right.
there, and I was advocating for him. I'm like, "What is wrong? Like, why aren't you guys, like, hiring him? What do we need to do?" And it was ended up being his one small thing. It was his production rate wasn't fast enough, and he didn't know about it. They didn't communicate it with him. So,
What?
he was yeah, he had no idea. And it's because he was employment services, so he didn't have job coaching. I was his support. So, um and so, um, that's all it took was, like, me reaching out to them and them because I was in a constant communication with them anyway. I'm pretty sure they think I'm so annoying,
Hey, you gotta
I
That's what
do
we
don't
your
do, yeah.
job.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, but anyway, so, yeah, by the end of it, he was, and he was able to drive again because he wasn't able to drive. So that's the other thing I set up through, another organization that helps people, like, do assessments for their, driving part of their, disability, and so, to reassess, and he was able to have his driver's license, a his own apartment, and,
Wow.
a good job making really good money, and he's self-sufficient, and he's still employed there 6 months later after
That's
his closure,
wonderful.
so, yep, it's super exciting,
Yay.
so
That's such a great story. Both of those were. All right, ladies, thanks so much for sharing those stories and your time with us today. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about or?
I don't think so. I think the next thing that we're gonna do is the, disability, mentoring day on October 23rd. It's a really big event that we support, and we'll have a booth there. So if, you wanted more information, you can come, or you can always call, or visit our website, in order to get started with services, and I can go down, whatever information that, that anybody may have.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and we'll be sure to put that on our website calendar too, so folks can go there and check out for more details.
Awesome.
Awesome, ladies. Well, thanks so much again for being here with us today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you so
much.
All right.
much.
For our upcoming events, we have Mind's Eye View, which is the first Monday of each month. We have Tech Talk, is the second Monday of every month. And we have bowling, which is for all of our consumers in KCK, and that's the third Wednesday of every month. And for more information or for additional support groups, go to thewholeperson.org and click on the calendars tab, and you can see all of our upcoming events and support groups.